أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا محمد سيد البشر وآله وصحبه وسلم أجمعين ومن والاه ومن لم يوالي هذا الرسول فيترك أو يصمت. This is not for you. If you do not believe in Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you do not believe in the Quran, you'll find this is all gibberish. Especially this now, part 3 on what is the Arabic language. I'm going to explain what Sayyidina Muhammad Mitwali Sharawi, the Mujaddid, he's the one who revived Islam last century, radiallahu anhu warda, what he says about the Arabic language. And this, you'll have to take it within faith. You can't take it off faith. You can't throw the Quran at someone and say, well, read what it says, and he will say, well, it's gibberish for me, I'm not going to understand that. Of course he's not going to understand that. So we come to page 118, and Sayyidina Muhammad Mitwali Sharawi will explain. First of all, you have to understand what history is. So we're still explaining from the same book, the Quran versus people. You'll have to understand what history is. You'll have to outline, first of all, like I've got history, for example. You need to identify what is history in order to understand the history of languages and the history of the human race. Sayyidina Muhammad Mitwali Sharawi says, and everybody knows this as scholars in Islam, they will tell you the Quran is not a book where you can take like the Bible and look through it and see when people were born, which date, what happened. Basically, Sayyidina Muhammad Mitwali Sharawi outlines things in three. I've actually narrowed it down to 3 main points. He's got so many points, but 3 points would be more than enough. History, according to Sheikh Mitwali Sharawi radiallahu anhu, is merely linking events to dates. So date is not important as much as the events. For example, the dividing of the sea for the Israelites, running away from Pharaoh. This is an actual event. It happened. When did it happen? I'm not going to tell you it happened 5,000, 4,000 BC. I'm not going to tell you that. I'm not going to tell you it happened 1,000 BC. I don't know. People are still looking. Just like Bukhtunsur. When did he come in and destroy Jerusalem and Bayt al-Maqdis and took all the Jews to Bani Israel to Babylon and so on? People say 500 years before Christ or 100, and some people say no, 500 years before, and even the Torah is contradicting with the Bible, with everything, with even the events of today. So the second point, he says, events or incidents are happenings in history. Events and points are happening in history. Something happened in history, so that's an event and that's a point. Not necessarily linked to a specific date. It's very well known. Even if you don't know, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam ولد عام الفيل. We don't know which day. We don't have the exact day, but we know, like we know Badr, we know Uhud. One is the 7th of Ramadan, the other is 18th of Ramadan. But regardless, but we do not know which day. Which date on certain things. Okay. Al-Ba'th, when did that happen? It happened that year, approximate that year, but we do not have the exact day. We can't say our independence is this. No, this is when we started marking dates and time that we know when our independence is. The third thing is a story or a tale is a form of historical events. This is very important. When you read the Quran, you'll always know that the historical events is a story or a tale linked to a historical event that had happened. So with these 3 points, he goes out and he explains explicitly. You take this to Oxford, they'll throw it in your face, because now al-munafiq, also the Muslim munafiq, have eaten and drank from Oxford. You need to give us an actual paper that was written during Sayyidina Rasulullah ﷺ that has the Quran. Otherwise, we're not going to believe that the Quran was written even that day. We say simply, it doesn't exist. Doesn't exist. You take it as it is. Al-Quran is an oral history. End of story. It was narrated from Qari, Mustami', Muqri, Qari, Mustami', Muqri, so on and so forth. Another thing linked to these 3 forms are the characters linked to them. An example would be a Khalifa has done something during his date and time. We know the Khalifa exists. Sayyidina Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu, there's plenty of books written about Sayyidina Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu. We do not know when exactly when it happened, but it happened. We know when he became Khalifa, when he was assassinated. these events, we say, well, it happened during this year in Ramadan, or during that year after Eid. We do not have we do not have when the king took the throne, when he wrote the constitution. We do not have that. So it's logic. You'll have to understand, we care about events more than dates itself. So the dates are here linked to wisdom, and story linked to that is lessons. For example, with problem and its solution. An example would be stories of the Prophet alayhum salam. We say the analysis of qissa, according to Sayyidina Muhammad Sharawi, he says qissa is qass al-athar, which is basically tracking your tracks in the desert. Qass al-athar, we track your tracks in the desert. So this is where qissa and qass al-athar comes from. Sheikh Mitwali Sharawi also explains that the impact on us as humans, as Muslims, is to be taken from the events. An example, chapter 12, Surah Sayyidina Yusuf, dispute between brothers. Chapter 18, Surah Al-Kahf, the seven sleepers, how they ran away from an oppressed oppressed situation. A king used to oppress all the Christians, so they ran. Muwahideen billah, they were Muslims, and they went and they slept for 109 years. Which cave, how many years exactly, doesn't matter. It happened. Did they have a dog? Were they 7? Were they 8? Were they 6? Doesn't matter. It happened. Pharaoh of Egypt, in the times of Pharaoh, is the story of every Pharaoh in this world. We can't say no more, otherwise they'll drag me maybe to prison. Wallahu al-alim, Wallahu al-musta'an. The two-horned leader, some people say Alexander the Great, but he's not. He's someone else. He's the two-horned leader who did justice with Ya'juj and Ma'juj and a lot of people. And he was given this whole earth, the known world, let's say. Prophet Saleh, he's an Arab prophet. His people asked him for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to show them a miracle. Naqat Saleh is very famous, the camel that shot out from a rock, and it was pregnant, and they still disobeyed and killed. So you've asked for a miracle, you were given a miracle, and then you've disobeyed. And Sayyidina Shu'aib, where the balance, they used to cheat in the balance. One of the amazing things here in Australia is that when you go into any supermarket and you find 100 grams or 50 grams of nuts, and I always do this, I take it and I weigh it. It's either 105 or 110. This country is very, very, they like being just. Why? Not because of Iman, because they don't want to be sued. Because if it's less than 100 grams, you're going to have a lawsuit. But still it's good. They're maintaining al-mizan, which is good, regardless of whether they're kafara or not kafara. They maintain mizan. When he gives you, this is 100 grams, you make sure it's 100 grams, 100 and something grams, which is true. People of Shu'aib cheated on this. Yeah, la'anahumullah, they took them all. They're all to Jahannam. So today when someone reads the Quran, there's specific events for specific people. Can't be magnified to others. An example would be Sayyidina Maryam alayhi salam. Sayyidina Maryam and Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam, when he was born without a father. That's a miracle. That is especially for Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam. Why didn't they follow Sayyidina Isa? It's for them to understand. It's up to them. Anyway, so that was for a specific point in time for Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam and Sayyidina Maryam. Now, in regarding to languages, Sayyidina Muhammad Sharawi goes back to chapter 2, Surah Al-Baqarah, and basically from ayah 30 to ayah almost to 37. In one page, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells the angels, وَقَالَ رَبُّكَ لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ إِنِّي جَاعِلٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ خَلِيفَةً, right until يَتَلَقَّى آدَمَ كَلِمَاتٍ مِّن رَبِّهِ. All this in a small confined space gives you the story of Sayyidina Adam, from creating him, teaching him, living in heaven, and then after that being casted out of heaven. All in one page. Imagine that. You will have to write pages and pages of some president or some whatever. And the Quran, Sayyidina Adam, Abu al-Bashar, the father of all this nation, was in one page. Explain the whole thing. So it says basically the mission was basically to plow these fields in this world, and how to make him the agent of Allah, Khalifatullah fil ard, which is basically to do justice and all this. During that debate, Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam, of course the angels did not ask, they asked from fear. Asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, would you leave someone who would slaughter and kill? Yeah, because on earth there were also jinn living here before, and they used to slaughter and kill. But they asked out of fear. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, إِنِّي أَعْلَمُ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ, I know more than what you know. سبحانك ربنا لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا. They say, glory is to you, Allah. We do not know except for what you taught us. After that, the angels of higher caliber, they made out of light, still they were asked to sujood for Adam. We were honored so much. It's not funny, seriously. Satan refused. There was a debate between Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Satan. Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam learned. He knew how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Ghafurun Rahim. He could have taken Iblis and thrown him in hell, but he didn't. But this is where Adam alayhi salam learned a lot of characteristics of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ghafurun Rahimun Sami'un Alim. After that, we should not hinder the scientists basically in searching and looking on how we learned more and more. Sayyidina Muhammad Mitwali Sharawi also emphasizes that we as human beings, we learned by observing. Once we observe, we see, we learn, and we know how to put one and one make two. We've seen the steam, we've learned how to make the steam engine, we've seen electricity, we've learned how to harness that, we've learned a lot of things. So chemistry and biology basically adds more, doesn't hinder anyone to learn. In fact, the Quran was the trigger for the Muslim and the Arab to learn more and to add more of these scientists. We have knowledge that made the West reach the moon because of our simple mathematical equations. Imagine that. If it weren't for Khawarizmi, we won't have computers. If it weren't for Khawarizmi, Jabir bin Hayyan and all of those people, we wouldn't have a small satellite going around the earth. They will say Newton came recently. Newton's history is yesterday. We're talking about Jabir bin Hayyan. We have Al-Biruni. Al-Biruni was 1,300 years ago. He measured the earth, and I have him here in this book. We'll come to Al-Biruni. Glimpses of history shows us that human race had learnt from one another. It's basically languages like DNA with us. It's impossible that we have come from monkeys and started going, oh, I think I'm going to call this tree. Wow, really? Are you going to call this tree? I don't want to call it tree. I want to call it a car or a rocket. How is that? It's rubbish. At the very end, every single ayah has its own theme in what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has promised and what you get as punishment. The question of how Adam did learn. Let me tell you, the knowledge of human beings has been always emphasized by Sayyidina Muhammad Mitwali Sharawi is from a higher caliber to a lower caliber. Remember the story of Solomon when he didn't see the hoopoe bird, the hudhud? He said, Aina al-hudhud? Hudhud had some knowledge that even Sayyidina Sulaiman, the King Solomon, didn't know about until he came and he said, I have seen people who procrastinate basically sujood for the sun. Imagine that. Sayyidina Sulaiman didn't know this. So Adam alayhi salam was definitely shown everything. Every dabba. This is a donkey. This is a monkey. This is a whatever. This is a car. And there was sound that fell onto his ears. Imagine. Quran we read, we hear, but the Quran is not a creation. It's Kalamullah. You'll have to understand this. You'll have to put this in your head. Otherwise, this is where you go astray. And you start saying that the Quran is also makhluk. Don't say that. Don't you ever say that. So, Sayyidina Muhammad Mitwali Sharawi tells you, or tells us all, you take a little child into England becomes English, France becomes French, German becomes German, in Arabia becomes an Arab. How do we learn? We listen, we hear, we are told about the objects. Exactly how Adam, Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam, was taught. The mother teaches the child. And that's how we learn. It has never been conceived that a human being existed on this earth without knowing the objects around him. The first object he will know after this is your father, and this is water, and this is where you go and do your business. That's the first thing you'll ever learn. You did not go on tree and go, I think I'll make a bathroom there and a kitchen there. That didn't happen, okay? So if you want to think like that, go get out of here. Seriously, that's not for you. This lecture is not for you. So it's been there since the year dot. Similarities in languages very clear. Hebrew, Persian, Urdu, Arabic, and Hindi all come in the same category. What went up north, and Assyrian basically went with the same family. What went up north and continued up north right into Europe became an Indo-European languages. It went into Greek and Latin, and then after that it went into something else. The Chinese, after Sayyidina Nuh alayhi salam, went from the Indus to straight into China. That land was different. It was blocked away from the Middle East. After the flood, you'll have to understand this, they developed photos or pictures. From pictures became characters. So even if you go and learn basic Chinese, they'll tell you this is how they drew fish and this is how it became. This is how they drew a small icon of people and this is how it became people. Just two lines, and this and so on and so forth. Even house, man, woman, friend, everything. And it developed, and they became so isolated, they became basically the most isolated people on earth. After this, the only thing that kept these languages together, especially in the Middle East, is the Quran. The Quran basically, if you have Arabic traveled all the way to Morocco, imagine there's no Quran. The Arabic language would have moved in from Morocco to Spain and became a distorted version of a Hispanic Arabic language, totally different. In the Gulf and Iraq, it would have gone into Persia and have actually mixed into Persian Arabic, would have diminished there. And Sham, the Levant, from Syria, from Damascus, went up north, would have got more into Romanized. And Egypt would have stayed as it is, more Coptic into either Romanized because of so many invasions. What kept the Arabic language as it is, including a Sha'r al-Jahri, is the Quran itself made it solid, not to move anymore into distortion. Now we did say before this, the Arabic language was found as it is. The Arabic language, classical language, al-Fusha, was as it is. But in today's day and age, and it was all clumped into the Quran, and the Quran was the moving point. It's the source. You have to understand this. Now, people are trying to play with the source to tell you, no, it's not the source, because the Sha'r al-Jahili manhul. Are you crazy? Like Sha'r al-Jahili was done after the Quran, after the Ba'ath, and then it was said that it was no, Sha'r al-Jahili was before the Quran. Whatever saqim and something that is not worth of classical, say Arabic is huge, it's a huge language. You can't put it in a small book as a dictionary. No way on earth you can do that. Arabic is the only language that could not be contained anywhere else in this world, not in a book. And the Quran is the classical Arabic, and it challenged the Arab to get something like it, and they couldn't. So from there we move on. I've written about how the Arabic language would have actually distorted without the Arabic language. People would have forgotten the Sha'r al-Jahili, and then after that it would have moved on and on and on. But the Quran basically was the source and the main source of the Arabic language, which is basically it's making people now even in universities. They're trying to fight this and prove it otherwise, unfortunately. We come across um, the at the very end to conclude this. Um, besides the observation that taught human beings how to go on to their lives, the Arabic language was never written. It was always heard. It doesn't mean that Anbiya'ullah alayhim salam did not speak Arabic when they traveled. And it doesn't make any sense also. I'll speak on later on. It doesn't make any sense that Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam would go from Iraq to Sham and not speak Arabic. Then what did they speak? And between Sayyidina Ibrahim and Sayyidina Nuh also, it wasn't that much. They lived for about 100 years, more than 100 years, about 700 years and 800 years, and they saw each other. So a Nabi knew a Nabi, so on and so forth. But as I said, this episode, because of explaining Sayyidina Muhammad Mitwali Sharawi, it wouldn't suit those who have no belief. I'm sorry about that, but that's how it is. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم أجمعين ومن والاه.